This is the QTV Nightly News, which is also on Key Radio 103.3 FM. I am Jacqueline Coley. Thank you for joining us. Here are the headlines. President Barrow welcomed at the State House in Banjul on Friday a delegation of young Gambian entrepreneurs who presented to him a new private sector-driven economic partnership framework. The Gambia Scout Association has launched a new initiative, Ticket to Life, aimed at protecting vulnerable children in the Gambia, including those living with disabilities. The newly elected Secretary General of the People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism DOI Party, Honorable Swaibu Toure, pledged to prioritize party unity, institutionalize strengthening and grassroots expansion following his election to replace Halifa Sallah at the party's recent Congress. In international news, at the 2026 World Government Summit in Dubai, President Samia Suluhu Hassan of Tanzania, the Prime Minister of Mozambique, Maria Benvida Levi, and former African Development Bank President Akin Wuma Adesina called for the African continent shift from aid dependency. Also in international news, education has been named Africa's top priority at the World Government Summit in Dubai. Leaders and policymakers are urging governments across the continent to invest more in education. Those were the headlines. Now the news in detail. President Barrow welcomed at the State House in Banjul on Friday a delegation of young Gambian entrepreneurs who presented to him a new private sector-driven economic partnership framework, Alusise reports. Young Africans The
umbrella of the Builders Association presented an economic plan to boost business growth and position the Gambia as a regional entrepreneurship hub. Founded in 2025 by 35 business leaders, the association includes companies in healthcare, agriculture, manufacturing, technology, construction and logistics. The group says its members have already created more than 1,700 direct jobs and supported over 5,000 indirect jobs nationwide, with over $121 million paid annually in salaries. Speaking after the meeting with the president, Dr. Ismail Baji, founder and CEO of Innovax Global Health, who is also the group's chairperson, said the opportunity to speak directly with the president and receive his support and encouragement was both meaningful and motivating. He pledged the group's continued collaboration with the government under the National Development Plan.
I think as Gambians, every single day we wake up thinking, what could we do more to add to the quota of the national development from an economic perspective. So just overall, very, very excited to have the opportunity today. But to say that this is just more, not a moment, but a beginning of strengthening our relationship in the private sector, them understanding our areas of strength and how best to leverage us. That way they maximize our potential as well too. So once again, I'm speaking on behalf of all the business leaders who are builders across all sectors today, and really, really grateful.
The group describes itself as non-partisan and committed to enterprise development, accountability and economic opportunity. President Barrow assured them of his government's continued support for youth-led enterprise and indigenous businesses as partners in national development. Reporting for QTV News, I am Alusise.
The Gambia Scout Association has launched a new initiative, Ticket to Life, aimed at protecting vulnerable children in the Gambia, including those living with disabilities. Julden Jai attended the launch and she now reports.
Many of these children, especially those who are deaf or hard of hearing, face isolation and struggle to communicate, often feeling disconnected from both society and their families. The Ticket to Life project aims to change this by welcoming these children into the Scout movement, where they can learn, interact and grow in a safe, supportive environment. Ibrahima Sanyang, country coordinator of the Ticket to Life project, highlighted the challenges faced by these children, noting that Scouting can provide a transformative experience that fosters strong moral values and builds resilience in young people.
My heart is full as I look at these 63 Scouts we have here from St. John's. We are giving them more than just a scarf. We are giving them a ticket to life that can never be revoked.
Suleiman Sumare is the managing director of the National Roads Authority, and a former member of the Gambia Scout Association.
We are prepared to respond and answer to the call to duty. What is that call? It doesn't matter what it is. Any and everything a true scout will step up and take it on.
The Ticket to Life project promotes practical life skills such as hygiene, vocational training, and self-reliance, with a strong focus on protecting children who may struggle to report abuse or neglect. Calvin Mire, Africa coordinator of Ticket to Life, said young people can reach their full potential with proper support and pledged the World Scout Bureau's full backing for the initiative.
We are redesigning the program that we have to make sure that we restore hope to every young person who comes into contact with scouting through Ticket to Life. So far, from a regional perspective, this program is in 12 national scout organizations, and the Gambia Scout Organization is the 13th. And I am officially welcoming you, the young people, to join the 8,500 young people that are enjoying scouting under Ticket to Life in Africa.
Sanaba is a board trustee of the Gambia Scout Association, while Amadou Dafe is the association's chief commissioner.
Let's celebrate our diversity includes everyone. Whether you are fast or slow, strong or facing challenges, you have a role to play. Physical ability isn't everything. Determination and the heart are what truly matters.
Today, this association joined in a strategy to the WOSUM of 57 million young people worldwide. 176 NSO, which Gambia is a member and a founding member of WOSUM. And today we are in compliance with WOSUM standard. Just recently, we developed 14 strategy for the association at Kairakoko in an AGM.
According to the association, 35 pioneered scouts, including children from the deaf and hard of hearing community, have already been enrolled and will begin intensive induction training. Reporting for QTV News, I am Juldenjai.
The newly elected Secretary General of the People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism, DOI Party, Honorable Swaibu Toure, pledged to prioritize party unity, institutional strengthening and grassroots expansion following his election to replace Halifa Sallah at the party's recent Congress. State of Affairs host Alusise reports.
In his first major television interview on QTV State of Affairs program on Tuesday night, Honorable Toure, who is also the National Assembly member for Woolly East constituency, described his election as Secretary General as a result of an open nomination and election process and that internal democracy was fully exercised. He explained that although he initially preferred the role of political secretary, party members encouraged him to accept the nomination as Secretary General.
The trajectory is permanent. For example, when it comes to the strategic objective of the party is the same. But when it comes to procedure, you will never, that is tactic, strategy and technique. Now, the tactic will have to change. Okay. Once in a while, you will change the tactic, and because situations are not the same. So the tactics are bound to change, the procedure is bound to change, but the strategic objective remains.
Honorable Toure said his immediate responsibility is to heal divisions that may have emerged during the internal contest and to bring all factions together.
We must work together as one. We must, everybody in the must ensure that you contribute to resource mobilization.
Some also describe your party as more of an intellectual movement than a mass party. Is that fair?
Well, that's an opinion. We feel that we come up with programs that will actually uplift the masses.
He also announced internal reforms, including a revised party constitution and the creation of a new bureau focused on research, youth participation, finance, and inclusion of persons with disabilities.
Where do you think the current government is failing most?
Well, I think it's the living conditions of the people. It is a government that is thinking that loans and grants will actually solve the problem. And I keep telling them, you have always been there, I keep telling them these loans and grants will never actually, because they are meant for short term.
So, Honorable, how will you justify to someone watching this program, example from Kabada, who has never gotten electricity, and government is now providing electricity through loans, that this is not a long-term investment?
Yeah, electricity. Well,
or roads, perhaps.
No, well, I'm not saying don't. I don't know how you call it. Don't have me wrong.
Okay.
I'm not saying those things are not good. I'm not saying roads are not good.
Turning to national politics, Honorable Ture argued that opposition cooperation may again be necessary to defeat incumbency advantage, saying many voters are calling for another coalition agreement.
We have a situation where the Gambian people are yearning for coalition, and so any politician that is serious about change will have to also think in that same direction.
If your leadership, fails to grow the party, will you take personal responsibility?
Yes, I will. If we fail to meet our target as planned, I will take the responsibility.
Will you consider stepping down?
Yes, I will step down.
He concludes that the party's 4-year strategic plan will focus on cadre development, institutional strengthening, and national branch expansion. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cisse.
We will now go. When we return, we have more international news stories. Stay tuned.
mu ngi dooree ci liñ am ci suñuy palaat loolu nag moo tax buntu liggéeykaay United Nations seen banqaas bi dox na ci wàlli tëddalini dund ak mbayteef di Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations ak ministre bi saytu wàlli wéet garam gi ñoo jàppalante nag ngir gën a yokk nag lépp loo xam ne mu ngi jëm ci wàlli sartay niw teg nag ci wàlli ñami tànneef yi nga xam ne nii danañu jàppale ngir nag ñu mun a mottali lépp loo xam ne aajo nañ ko ci ñam yu sell lii nag ngir yéwénal wér-gu-yaram di ñu aari tamit ci ay jàngoro jëfool juróom benn xeeti ñami tànneef yi nga xam ne nii moom lañ faral di lekk bés bu nekk ñami tànneef yooyu nag mun naa nekk genn wàlli booli maalo wala genn wàlli mburu tapalapa lii nag ci ñami pepp yi bokk na ci tamit ak ñam yi nga xam ne ñami reen lañ lu mel ni ki ñam bi ak pataat ngir nag ñu mun a am dund boo xam ne nii dana sell tey jak ci ñun ñu tànn nag ñam yooyu nga xam ne nii tamit nekk na mbiram lu mel ni ki maalo mu sell ak wala fëriñ ak ñu yokk ci nga xam ne nii dana ñu yokk ñam yu sell lekk nag mu commencé ak tànneef yoo xam ne nii dana yomb ci li nga xam ne loolu la ñooy lekk toftal nag sarta yi nga xam ne nii tëral nañ ko ci wàlli ñami tànneef yooyu ngir yokk ñu nag kattan ci ngën a yaxanal nag suñu wér-gu-yaram di wér-gu-yaram Gambia bu gën a sell.
Welcome back, and this is QTV News. In international news, at the 2026 World Government Summit in Dubai, President Samia Suluhu Hassan of Tanzania, the Prime Minister of Mozambique, Maria Benvida Levi, and former African Development Bank President Akinwumi Adesina called for the African continent shift from aid dependency to private capital, reforms, and long-term investment. Mamla Buka has the rest of that story.
Moderated by former CNN anchor John Defterios, the urgency of the panel discussion was underscored by a stark disparity in global capital flows. Despite Africa housing 12 of the world's 20 fastest growing economies and possessing a natural asset base valued at over $6 trillion, it currently attracts less than 5% of global foreign direct investment. Leaders noted that of the $1.6 trillion in global FDI recorded in 2025, only approximately $60 billion flowed to the continent. This session sought to address the structural barriers such as perceived risk and fragmented markets that keep institutional investors at bay, and what must change to unlock trillions in minerals, infrastructure, energy, and youth-driven growth to build a continental economy where value is added at the source, to ensure that Africa's resources drive African industrialization rather than just external profit. Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, the former AFDB president, said aid is akin to a walking stick that once removed will have Africa toppling over, and shared why he doesn't believe Africa needs it to develop.
We have to look at Africa not from an age perspective, from an investment perspective. Macroeconomic stabilization is working better on the continent. Fiscal consolidation is working. A lot more investment in terms of attracting investment, investing in infrastructure, which is leading to productivity growth, and all of that is going on. So that is something to pay attention to. Africa here is not just about promise, okay? Africa is about portfolio. These portfolios are working.
Samia Suluhu Hassan, the president of Tanzania, shed light on the reforms taken to invite more investment in their country.
We thought we have to create a conducive business environment in the country. So we had to change our policies, laws and regulations to make them more attractive to the investors to come in the country. In principle, the basic infrastructure for investment growth is already laid in Tanzania. Already laid, and having done that, we have improved the number of projects registered in the country. By 2018, we had around 250 projects, FDIs, in the country. But till 2024, we have registered 970-something projects in the country. And that's from $3.8 billion, and now we have close to $12 billion.
The panel concluded on the consensus that Africa's rise is no longer an optional part of the global portfolio, but an economic inevitability, with Dr. Adesina sharing that the upcoming Global Africa Investment Summit will be used as a key platform to convert African assets into investable portfolios. Mamna Buka, reporting for QTV News.
Education has been named Africa's top priority at the World Government Summit in Dubai. Leaders and policymakers are urging governments across the continent to invest more in education, highlighting the urgent need to reform and expand systems to meet the demands of Africa's rapidly growing youth population. Ansmane Sonyasi reports.
According to projections shared at the summit, by 2050, nearly half of Africa's population will be under the age of 25. This youth surge is expected to place unprecedented strain on already stretched education systems, while simultaneously presenting a potential demographic dividend if governments are able to equip young people with the skills needed to drive economic growth, innovation and social stability. Laura Fringetti, Chief Executive Officer of the Global Partnership for Education, highlighted both the promise and the persistent challenges associated with education investment. She noted that while education delivers some of the highest long-term returns for societies, it often struggles to compete for political attention and funding because its benefits are not immediately visible. The African Union's decision to designate 2024 as the Year of Education elevated the issue on national agendas, reinforcing the need to prepare Africa's rapidly growing youth population for the continent's future development. Despite this momentum, financing remains one of the most significant obstacles. The Gambia has seen an explosion of investment in education, both in terms of increased infrastructure and capacity building. At the same time as the World Government's Forum, the Gambia's Higher Education Minister, Professor Pierre Gomez, was concluding a historic 11-day strategic study tour to the Republic of South Africa, undertaken under the auspices of the World Bank-funded Resilience, Inclusion, Skills and Equity RISE project. Speakers at the Dubai Summit emphasized that traditional aid-based models are no longer sufficient to meet Africa's education needs at scale. Policymakers are increasingly calling for innovative financing solutions, improved public-private partnerships, and stronger domestic revenue and tax systems to ensure sustainable long-term investment in education. Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, is positioning itself at the center of this shift. Hannatu Musa Musawa, Nigeria's Minister of Arts, Culture, Tourism and the Creative Economy, underscored the country's broader leadership role on the continent, arguing that Nigeria's success in reforming and investing in education would have ripple effects across Africa. As discussions at the World Government Summit concluded, participants agreed that education is no longer just a social policy issue, but a strategic imperative for Africa's economic resilience, global competitiveness, and political stability in the decades ahead. Ansmane Sonyasi for QTV News.
The World Justice Project has published its 2025 Rule of Law Index, revealing a significant decline in judicial independence and shrinking civic space, signaling growing risks to democracy worldwide. Mamoudou Gajaga reports.
According to the report, 68% of countries declined in their rule of law in 2025, compared to 57% in the previous year. The WJP Rule of Law Index is the world's leading source of original independent rule of law data for 143 countries and jurisdictions. The disparity between rule of law improvements and declines is widening. In the last year, countries that improved saw an average score gain of 0.52%. Meanwhile, countries that deteriorated saw an average decline of twice that, 1.07%. The difference highlights that while building resilient rule of law institutions can be a long and iterative process, dismantling them can happen rapidly. The report also showed a rise in authoritarianism, which is driving the rule of law recession. An expansion of authoritarian trends, namely a reduction in civic space and weakening checks and balances, has been the primary force behind its downturn, with deep declines in factors measuring constraints of government powers, open government, and fundamental rights. The WJP Rule of Law Index provides data on 8 factors: constraints on government powers, absence of corruption, open government, fundamental rights, order and security, regulatory enforcement, civil justice, and criminal justice. Sources range from 0 to 1, where 1 signifies the highest possible adherence to the rule of law. This year, the index covers 143 countries and jurisdictions, with Qatar integrated for the first time. Top-ranked countries are Denmark 1, Norway 2, Finland 3, Sweden 4, New Zealand 5. Bottom-ranked countries are Venezuela 143rd, Afghanistan 142nd, Cambodia 141st, Haiti 140, Nicaragua 139. The most significant decliners include the Russian Federation, Sudan, and Mozambique. Countries with the largest improvements include the Dominican Republic, Senegal, and Sierra Leone. The World Justice Project Rule of Law Index is the world's leading source for original, independent rule of law data. Its rigorous methodology draws an expert and household survey to measure the rule of law in 143 countries and jurisdictions, covering 95% of the world's population. Mamoudou Gajaga, QTV News.
And before we end, here's a recap of the headlines. President Barrow welcomed at the State House in Banjul on Friday a delegation of young Gambian entrepreneurs who presented to him a new private sector-driven economic partnership framework. The Gambia SCAT Association has launched a new initiative, Ticket to Life, aimed at protecting vulnerable children in the Gambia, including those living with disabilities. The newly elected Secretary General of the People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism, DOI Party, Honorable Swaibu Toure, pledged to prioritize party unity, institutional strengthening, and grassroots expansion following his election to replace Halifa Sallah at the party's recent Congress. In international news, at the 2026 World Government Summit in Dubai, President Samia Suluhu Hassan of Tanzania, the Prime Minister of Mozambique, Maria Benvida Levi, and former African Development Bank President Akinwumi Adesina called for the Africa's continent shift from aid dependency. Also in international news, education has been named Africa's top priority at the World Government Summit in Dubai. Leaders and policymakers are urging governments across the continent to invest more in education. That's all for this news bulletin. Join us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. for the Weekend Review with Mamoudou Boj and Ade Drame. Thanks for watching.